It was 2 a.m. when Frida Parton posted something that made the whole world stop scrolling. I was up all night praying for my sister, Dolly. She wrote, "Many of you know she hasn't been feeling her best lately. I truly believe in the power of prayer, and I've been led to ask all of the world that loves her to be prayer warriors and pray with me." When someone's own sister posts that in the middle of the night, you know it's real. We're talking about Dolly Parton here, the woman who gave us Jolene, I Will Always Love You, and Coat of Many Colors. The voice that's been wrapping our pain in silk for over 6 decades and sending it back as hope. She's not just the queen of country music. She's the heartbeat of something bigger than all of us. And now at 79, as those Las Vegas lights dim and the world holds its breath, we're all wondering the same thing. Can the voice that healed millions find its own strength again? Don't click away, because what she's facing right now might be her hardest battle yet. Before we get into it, if you want more stories like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, smash the like, and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Here's what most people don't know about Dolly Parton. Before the wigs, before the sequins, before she became the icon we all know, she came from nothing. And I mean absolutely nothing. January 19th, 1946, Sevier County, Tennessee. The Great Smoky Mountains. Sounds beautiful, right? It wasn't. Not when you're born in a one-room cabin with no electricity, no running water, and winter pressing through the walls like it's trying to get in and finish you off. Her parents were so broke they couldn't even pay the doctor who delivered her with actual money. You know what they gave him instead? A sack of cornmeal. That's how Dolly Rebecca Parton entered this world. Paid for in grain. Her father, Robert Lee, couldn't read or write a single word. But his hands, those hands knew sacrifice. They were cracked, calloused, dark from work that never stopped. He'd wake up before the sun even thought about rising. Already out there working the fields, hauling gravel, doing whatever it took to keep 12 kids from starving. 12 children. 1 cabin. Think about that for a second. Her mother, Avie Lee, had 12 babies and somehow kept them all alive, in conditions that would break most people. She sewed until her fingers went numb. She cooked over a wood stove that filled the cabin with smoke. She sang while she worked, not because she was happy, but because singing was the only thing keeping the darkness from swallowing them whole. Winter in those mountains wasn't just cold. It had teeth. Dolly would wake up in the pitch black, the air so frozen she could see her own breath clouding in front of her face. 12 kids sharing blankets, huddled together because body heat was the only warmth they had. It was the only warm thing we knew, she said years later, and you can still hear the ache in her voice when she talks about it. Summers weren't any easier. Baths in the creek, where the water was so cold it stung like glass on bare skin. Feet getting cut on rocks. The smell of wet wood and smoke stuck in their hair for days. This wasn't poverty like we think about it now. This was survival mode. Every single day, with no end in sight. Get this. By the time Dolly was 6 years old, she wasn't just a kid anymore. She was a caretaker, fetching water from the creek, rocking babies to sleep, stirring beans over that wood stove until the smoke made her eyes burn and tear up. She didn't have toys, didn't have dolls. What she had was the truth that love meant labor, and if you wanted to survive, you worked. That's what her parents taught her, not with words, but with every single exhausted breath they took. Her mother moved like a hymn, soft and endless and so tired. Her father's footsteps were heavy, his shoulders carrying weight no man should have to bear alone. But here's the thing about growing up with nothing. It doesn't just teach you to survive, it teaches you what matters. Dolly learned early that you don't need much when you've got love holding you together. That cabin was cramped and cold and falling apart, but it was filled with something money couldn't buy. She watched her parents sacrifice everything, every single day, and never complain. never quit. That became her foundation. Not the poverty itself, but the strength it took to keep going when there was no reason to believe things would ever get better. The mountains gave her nothing except the will to climb out of them. And man, did she ever climb. 1955. Dolly was 9 years old when silence fell over that cabin in a way it never had before. Her baby brother, Larry, lived for 4 days. 4 days, and then he was gone. There was no funeral, no headstone, just a small patch of earth behind the house where grief learned to breathe and never really left. Her mother sat in stillness, hands folded in her lap like broken wings. Her father's footsteps got longer, heavier, like every step was carrying something invisible that wouldn't let go. And this little girl who sang to fill the quiet spaces, she met a silence that would never answer back. She carried that loss inside her for the rest of her life. Years later, she'd admit that some of her songs weren't just songs. They were conversations with the brother she barely met. Whispers to a child who never got the chance to speak. That kind of grief doesn't go away. It just becomes part of who you are, woven into everything you create. Music became her way of holding on to things she couldn't touch anymore. It wasn't just an escape. It was survival. But the world wasn't done teaching young Dolly about pain. School became another battleground, and the weapon was shame. One winter, her mother stitched together a coat for her. Not from fabric bought at a store because there was no money for that. She used scraps, patches of different colors and textures, each one chosen with love, each piece sewn with care. To her mother, it was beautiful. To Dolly, it was her mother's heart wrapped around her shoulders. But to the other kids at school, it was a joke. They laughed, pointed, called it rags. The kind of cruelty only children can deliver, sharp and direct and unfiltered. Dolly walked home through the snow that day, tears hot against the frozen air, holding that coat tight around her like armor that didn't work. She didn't say anything to her mother, didn't want her to know how much it hurt. But inside, something broke, and something else, something stronger, started growing in its place. That humiliation didn't destroy her, it transformed her. Years later, that patchwork coat became one of the most powerful songs she'd ever write. Coat of Many Colors. A hymn to dignity, a love letter to her mother, a middle finger to every kid who ever made fun of poverty they didn't understand. The song wasn't just about a coat. It was about seeing beauty where others saw shame. It was about pride in places people told you there was nothing to be proud of. When it came out, it changed everything. People who'd been laughed at their whole lives finally had an anthem, finally had someone who got it. Here's what gets me about that song. Even decades after she wrote it, Dolly could barely perform it without breaking down. After her mother passed in 2003, she'd start singing it and her voice would just crack. Right there on stage, in front of thousands of people, you could see the little girl in the patchwork coat still living inside her, still feeling it. That's the thing about pain. You don't get over it. You learn to turn it into something else. Something that might help someone else survive their own version of it. By the time she was 7, music wasn't just something she did. It was her shelter, her rebellion, her prayer. She wrote songs before she could even spell the words properly, turned hunger into melody, loneliness into lullabies, grief into something she could hold without it breaking her apart. She'd sing to warm herself when the cabin got too cold. She'd sing to fill the space her brother left behind. She'd sing because it was the only thing that made sense when nothing else did. Those mountains tried to crush her. Poverty tried to define her. Loss tried to hollow her out. But somehow, through all of it, she found her voice. And once she found it, she never let go. The day after Dolly graduated high school in 1964, she was gone. 18 years old with a guitar, a suitcase, and a dream everybody back home thought was ridiculous. Nashville didn't care about mountain girls with big ambitions. But Dolly didn't care what Nashville thought. She was going anyway. Those first few years were brutal. She wrote songs during the day and worked whatever jobs she could find at night. Waitressing, babysitting, anything that kept the lights on. She'd show up to record labels with demos, and they'd smile politely and show her the door. Too country, too different, too much. But here's the thing about Dolly. She wasn't built to quit. Every rejection just made her write another song. Then in 1967, everything shifted. Porter Wagoner needed a new vocalist for his television show. Dolly auditioned and got the gig. Just like that, she went from struggling songwriter to national television every week. Suddenly, millions of people knew her name. She and Porter became a duo, recording albums together, building something that looked unstoppable. But by 1974, Dolly had outgrown it. She wanted to go solo, build her own empire. Porter didn't want to let her go. The split was messy. And that's when Dolly did what she always did when emotions got too big. She wrote a song about it, I Will Always Love You. Not a love song for a man. A goodbye to a partnership that had run its course. She recorded it in 1974, and it shot straight to #1. Think about that. She turned a professional breakup into one of the most iconic songs in country music history. In 1982, she re-recorded it for a movie she was starring in. Hit #1 again. Then, in 1992, Whitney Houston covered it for the Bodyguard soundtrack and turned it into a global phenomenon. Dolly's songwriting royalties from that version alone made her millions. One song, multiple #1s. That's the power of writing something real. While other artists chased trends, Dolly built an empire on her own terms. She didn't just want to be a singer. She wanted to own her music, control her image, make decisions that mattered. In the 70s and 80s, female artists didn't get that kind of power. Dolly smiled sweetly and did it her way anyway. She launched her own production company, started writing for other artists, invested her money back into her career. And the songs just kept coming. Jolene, 9 to 5, Here You Come Again, Islands in the Stream with Kenny Rogers. Each one a hit, each one proof that she wasn't just lucky. She was talented, hardworking, and smarter than almost anyone gave her credit for. People looked at the wigs and the rhinestones and thought she was all flash. What they didn't see was the businesswoman underneath, the artist who controlled her destiny. By the time the 80s rolled around, Dolly Parton wasn't just a country star. She was a crossover sensation. Movies, pop charts, television specials. She'd taken that little girl from the Smoky Mountains and turned her into something nobody could ignore. And she did it without compromising who she was. She leaned into everything that made her different and dared the world to keep up. Turns out, the world couldn't get enough. While Nashville was falling in love with Dolly's voice, one man was falling in love with her in complete silence. His name was Carl Dean. 1964, outside a laundromat called the Wishy Washy in Nashville. Dolly was 18, fresh off the bus, doing her laundry. Carl pulled up, saw her, and that was it. He walked right over and said something that made her laugh. She'd later joke that he told her she was going to get sunburned, which was his terrible excuse to start a conversation. 2 years later, they got married. May 30th, 1966. And here's where their story gets different. Carl wanted nothing to do with fame, didn't want the spotlight, didn't want to be Mr. Dolly Parton. He ran an asphalt paving company in Nashville and was perfectly happy staying right there. While Dolly was on stages across the world, Carl was home, working, living his life, loving her from a distance most people couldn't understand. For 58 years, that's how they did it. He showed up to maybe 2 or 3 of her events in all those decades. Most people didn't even know what he looked like. Barely any photos, no interviews, no tell-all books. He just loved her quietly while the rest of the world loved her loudly. Dolly would come home from sold-out arenas and Carl would be there waiting, not asking about the performance, just happy she was home, People thought it couldn't be real. How could a marriage survive when one person's always in the spotlight and the other's invisible? But that's exactly why it worked. Carl gave her something the fans couldn't. Privacy, normalcy, a place where she wasn't Dolly Parton the icon. Just Dolly, his wife, the girl he met outside a laundromat who still made him laugh. Then, in 2021, Carl passed away. After 55 years of marriage, he was gone. Dolly didn't make a big public statement. She handled it the way Carl would have wanted. Privately. But those close to her knew. The light in her eyes dimmed just a little. The jokes came slower. She kept working, but something had shifted. The person who'd been her foundation for over half a century wasn't there anymore. Even now, she talks to him. Not in some mystical way, just in the way people do when they've loved someone that deeply. She'll catch herself saying something out loud to him in an empty room, asking what he'd think, sharing a joke he would have laughed at. She carries him with her everywhere, in the quiet moments between shows, in the songs she writes late at night, in the life she's still living because he taught her that love doesn't need an audience to be real. Carl Dean never wanted to be famous, and Dolly loved him even more for that. In a world where everyone wanted a piece of her, he just wanted her. And that made all the difference. Success didn't make Dolly forget where she came from. It made her remember harder. In 1986, she opened Dollywood in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, right in the shadow of those same Smoky Mountains that raised her. People thought it was just another theme park, another celebrity vanity project. But Dolly had different plans. She wanted to bring jobs back to her hometown, wanted to give people who grew up like she did a chance to make a living without leaving. Today, Dollywood employs over 3,000 people and brings millions of tourists to a part of Tennessee that used to be forgotten. She didn't just build an empire, she built an economy. But that wasn't enough. In 1995, she launched the Imagination Library. The concept was simple. Every child from birth to age 5 gets a free book mailed to their home every single month. Doesn't matter if you're rich or poor. Doesn't matter where you live. If you're registered, you get books. It started in her home county in Tennessee. Now it's in 5 countries and has gifted over 200 million books to kids. 200 million. Think about how many children learned to read because Dolly Parton remembered what it was like to grow up with nothing. She never did it for recognition, never held press conferences to brag about donations, never slapped her name on buildings and demanded credit. She just gave, quietly, consistently. During the Tennessee wildfires in 2016, she donated money directly to families who lost everything. During the pandemic, she helped fund Moderna's vaccine research, not because cameras were watching, because people needed help, and she had the means to give it. That's who she is when nobody's looking. Her goddaughter, Miley Cyrus, talks about her all the time, how Dolly's been a constant presence in her life, a mentor who never judged, never lectured, just loved her through every phase, every mistake, every transformation. When the world turned on Miley, Dolly stood firm. That's family to her, not the fake Hollywood version, the real kind that shows up when things get hard. She's written over 3,000 songs. Most of them nobody's ever heard. She doesn't write for fame anymore. She writes because that's how she processes life, how she prays, how she makes sense of things when the world gets too loud. Her catalog still earns millions every year, but she doesn't count by numbers anymore. She counts by impact, by the letters from fans who say her music saved their lives, by the kids who learned to read because of her books, by the families in Tennessee who have jobs because she came back home. Dolly Parton could have left and never looked back, could have taken her money and fame and lived anywhere in the world. Instead, she planted roots deeper, built something that'll outlive her by generations. That's not just success. That's legacy. Here's what nobody wants to talk about, but everybody's noticed. Dolly's slowing down, not by choice, but because her body's finally demanding what she's never given it. Rest. For someone who's been running at full speed for nearly 80 years, That's terrifying. Recently, she admitted she's facing a series of medical procedures. Didn't go into details, but she said it with that same smile. You just have to keep faith. I've faced storms before. Classic Dolly. Making it sound like no big deal when people close to her know it absolutely is. She even joked that these procedures aren't the kind she used to get from her plastic surgeon, trying to keep everyone from worrying. But the worry's real. In December, she made an announcement that shook her fans. Those Las Vegas shows postponed, not by a week or two, by 9 months. From December 2025 to September 2026. When an artist like Dolly postpones a major residency, you know it's serious. She doesn't cancel shows. She doesn't let people down. But this time, she didn't have a choice. That's when her sister Frida posted that message in the middle of the night, asking the world to pray, and the world answered. Millions of people sending prayers and love. The post went everywhere, not because people love drama, because they genuinely care about this woman who's given so much for so long. If you've watched her recently, you can see the changes. The sparkle isn't quite as bright. There's a tremor in her hands that wasn't there before. Her voice comes out softer now, tender but tired. Like silk, starting to fray. She's still showing up, still smiling, still cracking jokes. But you can see it's taking more out of her than it used to. Those closest to her see what she won't say out loud. The exhaustion she hides behind makeup and rhinestones. The way she needs more time to catch her breath. She's still Dolly, still fierce, still refusing to let anyone see her as anything less than strong. But strength doesn't mean invincible. And even legends get tired. She calls this her season of stillness. It means slowing down when you've never known how to slow down. It means accepting help when you've spent your whole life being the helper. It means facing the reality that time catches everyone eventually. Even icons who seem too bright to fade. Even in this season of stillness, Dolly can't sit idle. Between doctor visits and recovery days, she drifts toward her private studio, a warm room filled with guitars and old photos of the people she's loved and lost. There, she writes. Not for albums or tours. Just for herself. Melodies that sound like memories. Prayers disguised as lullabies. Each note a promise that the music will never fade. She's always processed life through songwriting. It's how she makes sense of things when words alone aren't enough. Now, facing what might be her toughest chapter yet, she's doing what she's always done. Turning pain into something beautiful. Turning fear into faith. She doesn't dwell on worst-case scenarios. Instead, she focuses on what she can control. Her attitude, her gratitude, her belief that she's not walking through this alone. Her faith has always been the foundation. Growing up in those mountains, church wasn't just Sunday mornings. It was survival. It was the thing that kept hope alive when everything else said give up. That faith never left her. And now, when she needs it most, it's holding her up. Honey, I've been through worse, she told someone recently. The Lord's got me. That's not bravado. That's genuine trust. She's faced poverty, loss, heartbreak, career setbacks, and every single time she found a way through. Not because she's superhuman, because she's faithful. What's striking is how she's handling this publicly. No victim narrative, no pity party, just honest acknowledgement that she's human and humans need rest sometimes. She's giving herself permission to slow down without apologizing for it. That's grace. That's strength in a form most people don't recognize. People keep asking when she'll be back. When will she perform again? And she smiles and says, when I'm ready. When my body tells me it's time, she's not rushing, not pushing through like she used to. She's listening. Finally, listening to what her body's been trying to tell her for years. That rest isn't weakness. That healing takes time. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop. The music will wait. The fans will wait. And Dolly, she's learning that waiting isn't the same as quitting. It's just another verse in a song that's far from over. There aren't many people whose lives feel bigger than their music. Dolly Parton's one of them. She didn't just sing songs, she turned struggle into symphony. She took heartbreak and made it healing. From that freezing one-room cabin in the Smoky Mountains to stages across the world, her story's never been about just making it. It's been about surviving, and then using that survival to help everyone else do the same. Think about what she's been through. Poverty that would have crushed most people, loss that would have silenced others, rejection that would have sent anyone else back home. But Dolly kept going, kept writing, kept singing, kept believing that her voice mattered even when the world said it didn't. And now, decades later, millions of people would say their lives are better because she never quit. She's written over 3,000 songs, built an empire, given away millions, changed entire communities. But ask her what matters most, and she'll tell you it's the letters from fans who say her music saved their lives. The kids who learn to read because of her books. The families who have jobs because she came back home. That's legacy. Not the awards or the money. The lives touched. The hope given. The love that keeps spreading long after the music stops playing. Right now, she's walking through one of her toughest chapters. Her slowing steps, those postponed shows, her sister's plea for prayers. But here's what we know about Dolly. She's been underestimated her entire life. And every single time, she proved them wrong. Not with words, with action, with faith, with that unbreakable spirit that poverty couldn't crush, loss couldn't silence, and time can't erase. The song's not over yet, not even close. If you enjoyed learning about Dolly's story, a like and subscribe would mean a lot. And if you want to share your thoughts or a favorite Dolly memory, the comments are open. Thanks for watching.